Hello, everyone. This is Jon Lancelot. I am here. RP, Real Progressives, our election. Hello. I hope you're having a great day and a great night. And we're here with a wonderful guest today. She's running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan, Marcia Squier. We're going to be speaking to her about her campaign and all the issues that we are facing today. And I wanted to speak to you directly about one issue that we're going to be talking about tonight, but I wanted to sort of prep you for this. Basically, we have to understand the situation that we're in as a country. We have to understand that everyday people need to get involved in the process. We cannot afford to have the Democrats and Republicans dictate to us what needs to happen because look at the state of the situation here in the United States. And Marcia is an independent like myself, and so I have a lot of respect for anyone that runs as a third-party independent. It's important that we support candidates that do so. Yes, it's a hard road to attempt to take over, the seats that are basically held hostage by the Democrats and Republicans. But in actuality, we need to do this work because if we're going to have a viable alternative for, the United States and also the world and the people of the United States have to come together, go to your neighbors, take over your councils, take over your local governments and state governments, and let's work together to push the federal government in the favor of the people. So I'm going to introduce you to Marcia. And hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great. I admire that you're running for the U.S. Senate. I know I've had a lot of experience there, even though I was only there for 6 months as an intern. But basically, the Senate is an institution that's very important in our country, and I admire that you're running for a seat there as an independent. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you're trying to do.
So my name is Marcia Squier. I'm running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan against Debbie Stabenow in 2018. I'm married with 4 kids. I'm 42 years old. I am a former Bernie supporter that did the proverbial Dem exit in order to run against the Clinton superdelegates who in Michigan here unanimously voted against the candidate that won Michigan by backing Hillary Clinton, even though Bernie won. So I just really felt like the Democrats here in Michigan, especially, we have 7 of the 17 are office holders, and they all 17 of them effectively deleted 150,000 votes for Bernie in the primaries. And so I just really got the strong sense that they were not representing the will of the people, which is what they're supposed to do, And hi, Jimmy Miller, how are you? But so I just became my new focus in life. It's like my new vendetta is to, to try to get our government back into the hands of the people again and be represented by the people and for the people. And of the people. It's really important because the Senate is basically filled with corporatists on both sides of the aisle. And so they're beholden to corporations and not their constituents. And so it's really time to rise up and say that, we're supposed to be the ones being represented there, not the corporations.
Absolutely. The whole, what did Mitt Romney say? Corporations are people, my friend. That is such a convoluted statement. Yes, legally, because of it was deemed so that corporations are people under the law. They're an entity. They're declared as one person. It doesn't mean that they're a living person. Giving them extra rights to do whatever they want. No person has that right. It's kind of convoluted. Like we don't have the right to go and dump oil in the river. We get arrested. For pollution, ironically. But if Exxon does it, you know what? They pay a little fine and they go on with their business. I think that you're absolutely correct that, I remember a senator said once that banks run the place, which is bad because this is supposed to be our institution, a people's institution. Um, what do you propose in your platform that's going to change all that?
Well, one of the main things that I think is super important for any candidate that's running is to address the election integrity issue. Until we have, there's a saying, it's not who votes that matters, it's who counts the votes that matters. And so it's really important to me to have a push to repeal and replace the Help America Vote Act. I believe it was 2002. To push, to throw those machines out, especially the ones with no paper trail, like the state where you're in, and go to hand-counted paper ballots with citizen oversight. I think that, I can run all day long, but if they cheat at the voting machines, then, what good does it do me to even run? So I think that's probably one of my biggest issues is election integrity. And I'm not talking about the Republican version of election integrity, which is voter fraud and all that, people voting twice and all that. Like, you could have, and same thing with the Democrats, like the voter ID laws, like, okay, we could literally have every single person registered to vote, but if our machines are compromised, it doesn't matter how many people are registered to vote. With this thing called fractionalized voting, and it does, you can figure those things out after the election, and you can file for a recount. And I found out in Michigan, it's like $125 a precinct. And thanks to last year's recount, I know which precincts to look at, because we had the infamous unrecountable precincts, which they didn't match up the totals. Even though the recount was stopped prematurely, they did get a lot of it done. And, there's different reports about, in Detroit, like so many machines didn't even work, 70, 80 machines. Then you had Pontiac, 1/3 of the precincts were unrecountable. And so, I really think that, I also learned that if you're the fourth place contestant, you can't file for a recount and expect it to be done. So I'm hoping to get second place at least, because if there's massive cheating going on in favor of the incumbent, Debbie Stabenow, then I gotta be poised to file for recounts in any and all suspicious districts where I think that the cheating might have occurred, so that at the very least we can get another election, and if not just like have all those people prosecuted for that. They did a little audit of the recount, and they found out in the small audit that they did that at least 31 people did vote twice, supposedly, once by mail and once in person. But we don't really know that they did that, because they do that Get Out the Vote campaign where they're calling people and saying, oh, are you going to vote or not? And they'll say, no, I'm not gonna. So they, mail in an absentee ballot on someone's behalf. And then on the last day, they decide to go in and vote. So it might not even be the voter that's, voting twice. It could be, malignant agents trying to tip the election. So I would say that's probably my biggest factor. And one of the things that I wish Bernie really would have addressed last year, because it's not going to go away. We can't be ostriches and stick our heads in the sand and act like these machines aren't bunk. They need to be thrown in the trash.
Absolutely. I mean, here in New Jersey, and just to emphasize, we're both running as independents. She's running in Michigan, and we're going to be talking about Flint and clean water in a second. But these machines, New Jersey, where I'm running, these machines are very old, extremely old. So old that the company that made them doesn't even exist anymore. And we're one out of 6 states that do not have a paper trail. So I totally empathize with you when it comes to the machines and whether they have integrity, whether they're making mistakes via machine or being tampered with. These are questions that voters need to tackle, and I believe on a local level, so I totally agree with you on that. I want to hear a bit about your monetary and fiscal policy. I know that's an important part of a senator's platform, and also when you are a senator, an important part of your legislation. What is your fiscal monetary policy?
So I have learned in the last year or two that since becoming fascinated with this side of the news, we're spending at least 53% of our federal budget on the military. And then all the other programs combined are squished into the other 47%. And a lot of that, it starts with the president. He submits the budget, and then it goes to the House and the Senate, and they work on the budget, and then they approve the funding, and then they have the House and the Senate both have their appropriations committees, and then they determine how the federal funding is going to be distributed throughout the different programs. And so I would really like to see more equal pieces of pie in that pie chart where, the military budget isn't eating up over half of our budget. It's kind of like spending all your paycheck on beer and cigarettes. You don't have anything left for the utilities. You can't waste on something that isn't productive for anybody but the military industrial complex. It's not good for the country. It's not good for the world. We gotta reallocate and redistribute the federal funding.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give the audience a picture. Out of a discretionary budget of $1.11 trillion, 54% of that goes to military spending. 54%. And all the other rest of it, I could read it off right now. Social Security, transportation, science, international affairs, veterans benefits are all in the single digits. But 54% goes towards military. And I think it's just a symptom of the bad strategy of defense strategy policies that we've had for the past 20 to 40 years. We all know Vietnam historically was, not a good idea, not the greatest idea. And we could talk about that. But what I want to focus on is the budget, is the economy. We have all the money in the world for the military, NASA, but when it comes to domestic policy, they never have the money for it, and they always shoot you with that question: where are you going to get the money? Well, anyone with any sort of knowledge on sovereignty knows that Congress controls what goes out into the economy. They sort of, they have their appropriations committees, they have their authorization bills that they put out, they have their ideas for whatever they want to do, and the domestic economy, the American people are left out in the cold. They whip us into thinking that, hey, we don't have the money for this, kick rocks. But then they'll say, well, you know what, we're going to spend billions of dollars to get to Mars. Can you tell us your view on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Why is it that, we can spend unlimited, copious amounts of money on the military, which has basically become the job of last resort for most, that's the only place that is actually like you can have a, steady paycheck. But there comes a point where we have to start being, more responsible with our money. We can't just blow it all on the military. I would much rather give it to the vets that already were in the military. We've got the VA is horrible, and they really need to reform. And, so I really think that because of the fact that they're corporatists, they put all that pork into the legislation. And so that's why this happens, because they're corporatists. I don't care if they have a D next to their name or an R. I can only think of one person in the House that I think, is standing up for the people. But I don't know anybody really, one person in the Senate and one person in the House, and that's it. That's out of 535 people. So it's bad when you take those corporations' money, you end up funding the wrong things.
Absolutely. And so we are in agreement that Congress has the power to put a few $1 trillion, at least $1 trillion, into infrastructure and healthcare, and we wouldn't feel it, correct? That actually would help America, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if we had a jobs program, like an emergency jobs program, instead of the emergency job program of joining the military, you could have an emergency job program of, infrastructure or, renewable energy, so instead of just employing people to be in the executive branch of our government, in the Navy and all the different armed forces, we could put them to work doing something more important,
Absolutely, absolutely. Congress has the power. There's no bank, there's no IMF or World Bank hovering over our Congress, structuring their economy, telling us that we can't do this and that. But we have to be careful. Of course, we're not going to just spend everything, spend, and then not have a reason for it. What we're talking about is that Congress will not use its power to alleviate the pain and the suffering within the United States. And so this takes me to clean water in Flint and also New Jersey. We're facing a very horrible water crisis in our country. We've been hearing a lot about Flint, and we want to hear, because you're on the ground there, and we have listeners who really want to understand what's happening there, and how we could help.
So I live a little over an hour away from Flint. I live just a few miles north of Detroit. So I probably have better knowledge about what's happening in Detroit than Flint. But I try to keep up to date on it all. And especially over the last 3 years, I've been hearing a lot about Flint. I did used to live up near there. I used to live in Holly. So I have some ties up there from 10, 15 years ago. But basically, their water is being tested in shady ways. They're only testing like the sink and not the shower, or they're only testing it when it's cold and not hot, or they're only testing in certain random places in certain neighborhoods. There needs to be a thorough test of every single faucet, in my eyes, to determine. And then I also just found out last week, by keeping up to date on it, they're not even supposed to boil that water. Wouldn't you think that if you got this contaminated water, that'd be the first thing you do is boil it? Well, all that does is put the contaminants in the air, and then you're breathing it in. So that doesn't even solve the problem, boiling the water. They need new pipes. We need to approve that in Congress, not just at the state level, but at the federal level too. Like, what are we doing to our people? Like, this is what we're killing Flint. Like, why has this been 3 years? This is horrible. Lives are at stake. People are getting Legionnaire's disease and rashes, and, children with the lead poisoning, they're going to be struggling their entire lives for decades because of this. We really need to move faster, and we need to test every pipe, hot, cold, all of it, and just do it over. The people of Flint deserve it. And at the very least, they can't even sell their house. Nobody wants to move to Flint. How are you gonna, they need to have like some sort of stipend, like either to stay or to be able to relocate somewhere else if they want. But I would give them the choice. Obviously, I know there's some things going on in East Chicago, Indiana right now, where they're like forcefully evicting people. And, people want to live where they grew up. So, a lot of people, not everybody, but I'd like to be able to give them that choice, and, if they want to get rid of their house, I think the government should pay for it. Like, they should buy all those houses that people don't want to live in anymore. It was their fault that this happened. It was not the fault of the people of Flint. Not at all. They didn't deserve this.
Absolutely. The American people are endangered, and we would like to think that we have adults as public servants. I mean, this is horrific what's going on in the United States. We have the power, we have the money, we're a rich country. We could fix these pipes. We could relocate, fix, send people back without a problem. We have to accommodate our citizens, because when you're a public servant, you are responsible for the citizenry, the health of the country. And I don't know what people are defending when they're sending all that money to the military and not even batting an eye to fix the pipes in Michigan. In New Jersey, we have an issue with Bakken oil pipes. They want to build, there's 3 proposals. There's 3 proposed pipelines going all through New Jersey, threatening our marshlands, threatening more water, where most of the state gets its water. We know that these pipelines burst and they have accidents. They go into the water system, and you might hear about it in the news maybe for a minute, and then it's gone. And I have, there's people here I respect that are saying, well, you know what? In this election, water is not an issue. Clean water should not be spoken about. People are not interested in it. And when I hear that, I'm very surprised that, those of us who know a lot about politics and able to do something about our society and, our civil services and rallying people, we have a responsibility to make sure that our American brothers and sisters are healthy, make sure the children are healthy. But when you have lead in the water, and people are getting sick, and the Democrats and Republicans don't seem to care. I mean, we have two senators that voted against cheaper prescription because it was coming from Canada, even though the factory is here in America. I mean, things like that is just why. So my question to you, you're an independent like I am, and I think we're really speaking to the issues. When people hear us speak, they know the truth is coming out. But when you hear a Democrat and Republican speak, there's really nothing coming out. Your current senator, Debbie Stabenow, what is her position on what's going on in Flint and the clean water?
Well, I just feel like there are a lot of all talk and no action. The mayor of Flint is a Democrat. The senators of Michigan are Democrats. The Republicans are governor. So there's like basically a mix. You can't really blame it on one party or the other. Therefore, you really need to blame it on both. Because you've got just a whole lot of nothing, a whole lot of just talk. They need to walk the walk. She's worried about Trump all the time. She's not really pushing for anything of her own at all. She's too busy running around, but Trump, and he's not our only issue. We have a lot of other issues besides Trump, and it's just like basically a distraction from the fact that they're not doing they're not doing their jobs. They want us to look the other way, but look at them over there. Don't look at my messy bedroom. Look at my brother's messy bedroom. It's worse than mine.
Yeah, that's a great analogy because it's sort of like that. All the mudslinging and playground pointing. It's like we're listening to first graders. We're not listening to legislators who really care.
I feel like we're the parents, and we left, and then our teenage kids decided to have a party while we were gone, and it spread like wildfire on the internet. So like all of a sudden 200 people were at your house, and things got damaged and broken, and minors were drinking and doing drugs and doing it in your bed, and then you walk in and like, the party's over. Yeah, get out of my house. Over. Like, this is what happens when I leave you guys in charge. Like, you ruined everything. The chandelier is falling down. The dishes are broken, I feel like we just walked, we came back home. Yeah. But we can't just turn around and leave. We have to stay. It's our house. We need to clean it up, because ultimately we're the ones that are responsible, and we are the ones that put them in charge. So, the buck stops here. We got to do something about it. We can't just, like I said, be ostriches and stick our heads in the sand and act like everything's fine, because it isn't.
Absolutely. The party is over because now people are getting hurt. People are getting sick. People are dying. Also, this should give you, the audience and everyone, a great view on what the government would do in case of some sort of outbreak, some sort of, epidemic. I know that we almost had a crisis here of Ebola coming into the country. We had avian flu a few years ago, and now we know when people are sick, people need help, that the Democrats or Republicans are not going to do anything. Think about that. Think about that when you're in the polls and you're voting because, your family's been voting one side for so long and you're just going to do it because you don't know the issues. You're basically poisoning yourself and poisoning all of us because you know what? We are responsible for our government. We are the one government. We are the one country in the world where the citizens have the power to unseat someone from power and put themselves in it. And we have to be responsible for this. And so this leads me to the healthcare issue, to the healthcare for all issue, for the irresponsible behavior of the Republicans blocking every single advancement when it comes to medicine, raising prices. Also, the Democrats allowing it to happen by sitting and watching it happen and then telling us to buck up, right? Oh, well, you progressives better buck up and join us because we screwed you the last time. And, we're just not going to do that. So now we're dealing with the ACA.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. Exactly. You follow the money, the ACA. And now we're trying to get through a bill for healthcare for all. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can tell you right now that if you look up Debbie's last campaign, who she was taking money from, she's got Blue Cross and Blue Shield is one of her top 20 donors. Delta Dental, those are both insurance companies. And then you've got Goldman Sachs and other Wall Street companies too, are all like basically filling up her top 20 list of donors. So if you just go to where you live, look it up, look up your representatives, find out who they are, and then go to the websites that will show you who they got their money from. And 53% of her last campaign was funded outside of Michigan, and a lot of it from Wall Street, from New York City. And why would you expect someone who took money from the health insurance industry to work for universal health care? That would have, hopefully we could put the health insurance companies out of business, because they don't provide any medical care whatsoever. They're not medical care providers. They're just money exchangers, so they don't actually offer any service other than the insurance. And so why, it just doesn't make logical sense to think that Debbie is going to get behind that bill. I just don't think, and if she does, it's only going to be because it's politically expedient for her at the time. She isn't going to be doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about healthcare, I want you to get back to your monetary policy. And I know you wanted to discuss that. And there's a public debate on it. On how it should actually move forward. Actually, there's a load of arguments about economics these days, and I wanted you to weigh in on the topic of the era that we're in right now.
So we're a monetarily sovereign country. We create our own money. We're not part of something like the European Union, where they have the euro dollar out throughout all the separate countries. Kind of like Michigan doesn't have any Michigan dollars. Like all 50 states share the same currency. And so basically we're also not on the gold standard anymore. And that's pretty common knowledge that we're not on the gold standard anymore. And, whether or not you agree with that or not, that we should be on the gold standard or that we shouldn't be, it's kind of a moot point because we're not. So we can argue and chase our tails all day long about, where this federal funding comes from and, whether or not we're going to cause hyperinflation if we start, spending money the right way instead of the wrong way. And it's like you're wasting precious time that we could be using towards pressuring our current legislators to be spending the correct way that they should be spending. That in a way that represents the people, not the corporations. So I feel like this whole debate that's going on, it's not good to the cause. And, but I can't tell everybody what to do. Some people, that's what they want to debate about. Okay, then fine, go ahead and debate about it. But I really have other things to worry about besides, the taxpayer boogeyman, because I know that we're the sovereign entity and that the Senate and the House Appropriations Committee and budgets and, they're the ones that determine the power of the purse. They're the ones that hold the purse strings. And that's the bottom line. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. What matters the most is that we start, helping our people. I'm not of the every man for himself philosophy. I'm more of the it takes a village, and we can help more people rather than, every man for himself.
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm going to, emphasize on that. I agree with everything you said because Congress does have the power. They have the power and they won't use it. Neither party will. People do understand that because when I speak to people in town halls, they get it. They understand. They just don't know how to move about it. That's our job is to figure out how to get people to understand more and so they could speak to it to their local council. So when we're talking about healthcare for all, when we're talking about, the way that we take care of clean water, make sure that the next generation of Americans have clean water, that we have to understand how it gets done. And Congress has the power, monetary power, the sovereign power to make a robust program to do just that. There's nothing is going to be lost, and I don't understand the reluctance. But you did say, and everyone does know, that there's special interests and there's money involved.
And lobbyists, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was in Washington D.C., just out of the Senate, I was working for a senator. I refused a lobbying job because it was just too slimy for me to even contemplate. Because you go to do a lobbying gig, you're guaranteed not to like the subject, not to like the reason why you will be lobbying the Congress. So I decided to do something else. But people have the power to do that. People have the power to make these decisions for themselves. And you know exactly what we're talking about. We're on the same page. So is there any other thoughts on healthcare that you wanted to share now that we got the whole economics thing out of the way? Because I think we're all in agreement here on how we're going to move forward with this and how we're going to push the Democrats and the Republicans aside to get the work done for the American people.
Yeah, as far as medical reform goes, I noticed none of them are really, the Democrats and Republicans at the federal level, none of them are really talking about decriminalizing cannabis. And this is a medically recognized life-saving treatment for people, you know. And so if you want to lower healthcare costs and pharmaceutical costs, we need to decriminalize cannabis. And we need to retroactively do it because it was illegally made illegal in the first place. And it actually saves lives. You know, 0 people have died from smoking cannabis or eating edibles or whatever. 0 people, you know. But then you've got like the Pediatric Society coming out and saying, oh, we don't want to see a marijuana shop on every corner like tobacco and alcohol. Tobacco and alcohol are not even in the same league as cannabis. They are detrimental to your health. Cannabis is good for you. You know, so for them to say, oh, that would give kids a bad impression. Hey, you know what? Maybe it's good for kids. I've heard stories about kids whose lives are being saved because of the oil from cannabis. So how is it so bad that somebody might use this natural life-saving remedy that you can grow in your backyard? You know, maybe we could have some hemp products too, but that's unrelated to the medical reform. But hey, that also could make biodegradable plastics, which would help, you know, to be more efficient in the medical industry. They use a lot of, you know, plastic disposable items, you know, because of the nature of the industry. You know, you can't really reuse a lot of that stuff, but if we could get more innovation with that, we could do more research. If we decriminalized it, we could find all the different strains and all the different benefits and just really unlock the key to true medical reform. You know, we could be taking pills all day long, but if all you really need is cannabis oil, then why can't we defund the pharmaceutical industry, you know, and the health insurance industry? So I really think that with all this talk of the medical reform, that needs to be talked about more because it's very important. And I disagree with Trump and his leave it to the states. I think this is a federal issue that affects everybody. And like I said, I think it was illegally made illegal in the first place, and it's wrongly classified. I would rather put it in something along the lines of aloe and garlic, like a healing plant with healing properties. You know, at the very least, a Schedule 5, which is the lowest. You know, and I think that people who sell it should be able to claim that income, and that would lower the unemployment rate because there are people out there that are earning a living doing this and feeding their children because of it, and they should not be torn away from their families because of that, and they should be able to be considered employed, you know. And it's a growing industry, and to ignore it it's folly. And again, it has to do with like alcohol, tobacco, you know, all these special interests that are lobbying, you know, Congress. So I'm not a corporatist. I'm not taking any corporate donations. And therefore, I am able to speak freely on this subject. I've got no pharmaceuticals in my back pocket. So, you know, I can actually talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm not taking any of that dirty money either because you know what? People need to hear this. People need to understand. When people do understand, they will then go to the vote voting booth and vote correctly. And I think you said something, actually, I know you said something that I like very much, and you said innovation. I think that government has been lacking innovation since the New Deal. The New Deal back in the time of FDR was a huge innovation because there were a lot of Americans that were suffering in poverty in the Dust Bowl era, and the government had to do something about it. And I believe today, if we had that sort of thing, they wouldn't do anything. Let's look at Flint. Look at what's happening in New Jersey with the infrastructure. They're not doing anything. All they're doing is talking about Russia all day. If this is my whole thing, and we're going to sort of take this into foreign policy. But if you're going to sit there and talk about Russia all day, and you've been in office forever, you've been in office for 100 years, and you're speaking about Russia and Russia's an enemy, this and that, let's put it into perspective. We've had a very complicated relationship with Russia back when they were the USSR. They were our allies in World War II. And then obviously after that, we had a Cold War. We passed the National Security Act of 1947 to really beef up our security apparatchik in our government. And we went straight into the Cold War. And, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis to fast forward, which was another complication that almost took out a lot of human beings at the time. And then, the whole communist madness where we had Vietnam and people died because we felt that if we were in Vietnam that we'd be able to stop the idealism of communism, which we know now that was a ridiculous idea. And a lot of people had to die for that. And now we're dealing with more anti-Russia jargon when after, they fell, that we helped Russia. And we've had, and I'm going back to the 70s now. We had Apollo-Soyuz. We've been cooperating with Russia when it comes to space policy forever. Nobody really talks about that. We depend upon each other when it comes to, the space policy. And that's what basically keeps us. It's kept us from any sort of conflict, major conflict. But now today, we seem to have forgotten about that. At least in Washington, they've forgotten about it. And they want to talk about how Russia's bad and how they've, the elections was rigged and all that. And look, there's credence to it. Let the lawyers deal with that. On the political front, what do you believe the American people should know about this? Because the thing is that they're using it as a distraction. What I want to do is let the American people know that as progressives, we have a way forward past all the mind wash that's going on. How do we fix our foreign policy to make sure that our neighbors, our brothers and sisters in other countries know that they could trust America?
Well, I'm on a semi-related subject. I am a big supporter of the Second Amendment. So I'm not talking about domestic, citizens' rights to bear arms, but I'm talking about military foreign policy now, which is semi-related because they both deal with weaponry. But I would love to see a complete weapons embargo, and not just where we're not bombing people anymore, but that we're also not shipping bombs to people to bomb other people like Israel and Saudi Arabia. We need to stop the bombs. We need to stop making them. They want to fearmonger us into thinking we need all these bombs, and we really don't. Maybe if we all were able to use cannabis again, there'd be a lot less animosity in the world. First of all, that might help with the animosity that a lot of these people feel towards, other countries. But you also need to shut off your TVs. If you're still watching TV and getting your news from TV, shut it off. Okay. Even Thomas Jefferson knew back in 1807 when our first Michigan senator wrote him a letter, and this was 30 years before Michigan even became a state. Wrote him a letter because he wanted to get into a newspaper business. And even Thomas Jefferson was like, the newspapers are liars. You're smarter having never having opened one than you are if you read a newspaper. So this isn't anything new, but that's why we really do need word of mouth. And that's what I do like about the modern times and the internet and Facebook Live and Google Live. Thank you, Facebook. Thank you, Google, for things like this that we can actually get in touch with each other and let each other know what we're thinking in real time. And even around the world, I've got friends on the other side of the world, thanks to my campaign that I ran last year, that show me what's going on over in their country. So I can actually see it via Facebook Live, what's actually happening there, not just what, Rachel Maddow is telling us is happening. She makes $2,500 a minute. How are you going to trust her? She's a corporatist too. She's just not a politician, but she's definitely part of the Democratic arm. We've got those six companies that own 90% of the media, which was thanks to Bill Clinton's Telecommunications Act of 1996. To repeal and replace that immediately. But basically 5 of them are left wing in favor of Hillary, and then you've got the one that's right wing. So honestly, I prefer the right wing media right now if I have to get my media just to see what they're talking about, because I already can't watch those. I used to love NBC. I can't. Chuck Todd is dead to me now. He had a party for the Clinton campaign at his house. Ugh. It's just disgusting to me. So, shut off your TVs. Let's talk to each other. We can talk to people around the world right now. I've got friends in Australia that I can talk to right now, or in Saudi Arabia, or the Gambia, or Senegal. Talk to people. Start building those bridges. The people need to. The 99% need to reach out to the other 99% and circumvent, because there's 1%ers in every country. It's not just ours. And so maybe Russia, the government, might be scary, but I bet you the Russian people are more like us than we realize, and so we really need to reach out to each other, the 99% all around the world.
Absolutely. And they are like us. They were protesting the government a few days ago or more recently. And that was very good to see that they're trying to fight for their government and their democracy and whatever they have there. They don't have much of one with Putin, but you know what? Let them determine it. I think the Russians are going to be okay. What we have to pay attention to is, because we've been the biggest kid on the block for years, and as progressives, we have to have a very sound defense and foreign policy. Gone are the days where we could just campaign and not have a plan for our international affairs. And so I just wanted to get your opinion, because it's very important that we speak about this, your opinion on what's going on in Syria, how to fix that situation. I know it's difficult. I know it's a tangle, but these are the issues that you're going to face in the United States Senate, and also what it extends all the way to Iran. And so I'm going to start with Syria and what you think of the situation and how we intend to abate that.
So I guess I would say the closest person that I would agree with on the Syrian conflict would be Tulsi Gabbard. And she's introduced her Stop Arming Terrorists bill, because she actually went there and saw for herself what was going on. And as it turns out, that the mainstream media isn't going to tell you, excuse me, we're arming the so-called moderate rebels, right, against the Assad regime. But Assad is not ISIS. They forget always to tell their audience that Assad is not ISIS. Assad was democratically elected president of his country. And we are the ones who armed ISIS so that we could be the ones to come in and save Syria from ISIS. We're funding both sides of this conflict. So you have to dig deeper. And when you dig deeper, you find out that, there's 2 pipelines. They just happen to be intersecting in Aleppo. One of them's owned by Saudi Arabia, and the other one's owned by Russia. Oh, yeah. Gee, I wonder why Russia's the boogeyman all of a sudden, but Saudi Arabia's the good guy. Well, Saudi Arabia gave the Clintons over $1 billion, and so I'm thinking that's probably why she was all talking about a no-fly zone over Syria, so that she could, because she was the chosen one, she was going to be able to rationalize military airstrikes in Russia. And so I think that, the conflict in Syria is a lot more complicated, and maybe Assad has retaliated in ways that we think are not humanitarian, but isn't the United States leaving depleted uranium bombs in Iraq and elsewhere, basically ruining the entire environment? And then we say they're horrible, or the Assad regime, they're going to be calling it a Trump regime too, I'm sure, and the Putin regime, that's just their way of scaring people. And I don't even think the public even realizes that there's 2 pipelines out over there in Aleppo. I don't think they even know. And basically, I mean, we have the same things going on here, especially like the Dakota Access Pipeline. Look at how our military treated those people, you know, and my heart goes out to, you know, my brothers and sisters at Standing Rock and that stayed there for so long.
Absolutely.
And put up the good fight, you know, with that. I really appreciate that. And I'm no DAPO all the way, but
absolutely,
you know, I think that has a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. Is the war on oil the war on ISIS is a smokescreen for the war on oil.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's a real issue. You're absolutely right. You know, there's other interests in there. They don't care about human life. A lot of people whose lives were destroyed. And I think as progressives who want to represent the people of the United States, it's our responsibility to try to fix these issues abroad, because we also have issues here at home that we need to fix, but it's all tied in together. And tying in those pipelines in Aleppo is a good way to inform the American people that we're dealing with a bigger issue. And, you know, when we destabilized and crumbled Iraq, basically we destabilized the region. And let's just be real about the strategy that we've used. And we have to have a very succinct strategy on making sure that if we're going to get out of an area, that the people that we leave are left in a situation that they could take care of themselves. I want to ask you, because I've been very concerned about what's going on in North and South Korea. How do you think, especially with Trump in office, it complicates it? In your vision, how do we solve a very complex issue like North Korea? There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of sifting through what went on. But in your view, what's the best way the Senate should approach that issue?
I would say the opposite of the way we've been approaching other countries with our interventionist wars. We need to stop that whole strategy altogether. I feel like North Korea is basically like a mini America trying to go around and be a bully, you know? And we're the bullies. Let's not kid ourselves. We're the bullies. We're the ones that have interfered in at least 81 elections. And probably, if you count 2016, we interfered with those too. You know, it wasn't Russia. You know, there was massive amounts of cheating during the Democratic primaries in almost every single state. It's documented. You know, so if you don't believe me, go to electionfraud2016.wordpress.com. Shows you state-by-state accounts of all the fraud that occurred. You know, and so we've got this government that can't control its, you know, can't help its own country. What makes us think that they can handle foreign policy either? They can't. You know, they're taking money from the military-industrial complex. And Israel has a lot to do with it too, the whole Israel-Palestine conflict. You know, they've got the American people thinking that Palestine's the bad guy. So because I shot your brother and, you know, and you throw a rock at me, then that gives me the right to kill your entire family. You know, and that's Israel basically, you know. Oh, they threw a rock at me, so I'm going to bomb their entire family. And I'm going to take their property and I'm going to live on it. You know, it's just like they're bullies. Same thing with North Korea. There's bullies on the block. And we need to stop acting like the bully because maybe they're learning from our example. You know, so if we start setting a new example of being a peaceful nation and striving for peace, you know, maybe they can learn from our example, you know, kind of like as a parent. You know, you can't raise your kid in violence and expect them to grow up nonviolent. I raise my kids in nonviolence. I don't raise my hands in anger on anyone, not my husband, not my kids, not my pets, not anyone. And so with the hopes that when my children grow up, they will also not be violent people, you know, and that works for the country too. Maybe if we stop being the interventionists and we stop being the bullies, then, you know, that's kind of North Korea. It's a tough issue, but, you know, I think that we need the reverse strategy of, you know, promoting peace. Not, oh, you're going to do some missile launching, so, yeah, we're going to take you out. What is that? That's like Israel does to Palestine, you know?
Yeah, you know, solving issues with bombs doesn't really solve any. It just creates more.
You can't bomb your way to peace.
You can't. And we have a State Department that it used to be full of great people. They all left because Trump, it just is a mess. And hopefully we can get a new administration and bring all the great people back. because we need to have diplomats, experienced diplomats, to help us form a new defense and foreign policy, which I believe that progressives are poised to do, and this is the reason why. We're coming up on 10 minutes, so this is going to be the last thing we speak about. Back to economics, we've had this international monetary system that basically decimates the resources of third world countries, the developed nations, underdeveloped nations, developing nations, and we use the Washington Consensus or neoliberalism pretty much take command of their whole government and their economic apparatchik and basically knock them over the head with it. This is a part of our foreign policy. And when we're talking about our Congress having the power, we're very fortunate that our Congress has the power to, basically over the money. But a lot of countries don't have that. They have to deal with the IMF and World Bank. Do you believe that, and I totally believe, but I just want to know your position on reversing the Washington Consensus and working with countries to figure out the best way for them to determine their own destiny?
Yeah, I think that we really need to reform like our foreign aid policy. Countries that are violating international human rights laws should not be getting foreign aid of any kind, not just, weaponry, but any kind. And we should encourage not only, human rights as a right all over the world, but, I would rather than send bombs to countries, get their people more educated and help them to better their country as well. Like the money that we're spending on bombing these people is, money that could be better spent helping them, get their own clean water and their own decent shelter and their own good schools,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can. Progressives are prepared. And progressives like yourself and I, who are independent, are prepared to take the reins and help the American people. And so we could all help the rest of the world. And that's what we need to go for. So since we're at the end of our rope here, and it was an honor to have you on the show, and I hope to have you on the show again at some point. But just reintroduce yourself, and let people know how you're running and where they could donate and your website or whatnot, so we could stay in touch with you.
Sure. So my name is Marcia Squier. That's MarciaSquier. I'm running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan against Debbie Stabenow as an independent candidate. I have a CrowdPack campaign, which is at crowdpack.com. If you want to donate, it's the independent candidate for U.S. Senate in Michigan. You'll find me there. And right now, the campaign has not been filed with the FEC yet. And so right now they're just pledged donations. And then once it becomes official, then they would be turned into real donations. But even if you don't have money to donate, I completely understand. Everybody's struggling these days. And so there's also an endorsement button and the share, of course. I would love it if you guys would endorse me on there if you can't donate, or both. And even if you're not very eloquent with words, you could at least share it on your social media accounts, on Twitter and Facebook and whatever that you want, that you use, because the mainstream media is gonna probably ignore me, so I really need your help. I really do. I've got an email address as well, which is marciaforsenate@gmail.com. I have a YouTube channel, that's still pretty new, that I need to get a volunteer on that, putting these videos on there, which I would love. And I've also got a couple of groups I wanted to mention. I've got a group of candidates called #YourNameForOffice2018. It's a Facebook group. You're more than welcome to join. It's my baby. I made it on Christmas Day. And we already have almost 800 people in the group, including an indie slate for Senate. So there's like at least half a dozen of us running all across the country as independents. Joshua Ford against Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. Trent Champ against Ted Cruz in Texas. Mary Knapp against Tim Kaine in Virginia, Steve Stokes against Dianne Feinstein in California, Andrew Brown against Bill Nelson in Florida, and a whole slew of other candidates all over the ballot, all across the country, all different parties. We're a multi-partisan group and an independent group. We're just people that really want to oust the 1%ers in favor of the 99. So you're welcome to join that group. I also have my Facebook Senate page is Marcia Squier for Senate. You can find me there. And in that page you can find like an upcoming event that I have in August, and the link to the Crowd Pack campaign and more information about me. That's probably the best place you could find more information about me and my campaign. On the lighter side, I've also got the Marcia Squier Dank Meme Stash, and also my personal page as well. I got to forewarn people though about my personal page. Sometimes I ask tough questions, and I'm hoping for answers to certain things, because I hear it going around, and so I ask my friends. I'm not trying to cause controversy. The controversy already exists before I even speak on it, but I do use my personal page to be my ear to the ground, because what good is a politician that isn't listening to the people? So if you really want to interact with me on a personal level, I would recommend, I only have room left for about 500 more people on my personal page, but you could at least follow me, and so you can kind of see where my mind is at on any given particular day based on whatever current event is happening. Don't be offended. The meme stash, that's where I keep a lot of my videos and interviews and things like that. So you guys are more than welcome to join. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or Independent or Green Party. I ran with the Green Party last year, so I give them a lot of credit.
Everyone together.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show. We will be watching, and we will be around. You can contact us anytime. Thank you. And everyone else thanks you as well.
Thanks, guys.
Right. So, there you go. Independents are on the rise. That was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. I'm right on page with her. I'm totally impressed. And now we know that we're going in the right direction. I'd like to thank everyone for watching on Real Progressives. Next Monday, we will be here again. We're going to keep on plugging away until we get what we need, which is to get the right people in office so we could send our country into the direction we feel is right, which direction now, totally not. And if you have any questions for me, you can always reach out to me. And I love the fact that Marcia, she's ready to just talk to everyone, not be separated, not be a rock star, not be available. She's right here for you. I'm right here for you. And I'd like to really tell everyone that I'm honored that you support independents and third-party candidates. Have a great night, and see you next time.